So was Japan like your first international trip?
Yes. Maybe not. No. I've been to like Jamaica, Brazil. No. Japan. It wasn't my first, but it was like, the main international trip that I'd
Uh-huh.
been
It was
on.
the
Yeah.
longest one anyway,
Yeah.
I would
Yeah.
assume.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. So like growing up, did you have like an international kind of mindset, or what made you want to go to a different country?
I was always interested in Japan. My mom bought me. Do you know? Have you ever heard of Yoanji in Kyoto? It's like a rock garden with like I forgot how many rocks, but you can only see a certain amount from a certain vantage point. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Okay. Not really. Not really.
Okay, all right. So it's a really famous rock garden. My mom, when I was like 6, bought me a miniature version of it, and I was really into gardens, like Japanese gardens. So that's like the first thing that got me interested in Japan.
Like those little tiny rock gardens where they have like a rake and you
That's
like
it.
flatten it out. It's like that.
That's it. That's it.
Right. I didn't,
Yeah.
to be honest, I didn't even realize that those were Japanese. Like I've heard of those. I'd seen them in people's like, office cubicles and stuff, but and also the little bonsai trees. Those are also Japanese, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know if it's Japanese. It might have been just some American company that made it, but it was marketed as Japanese. And then, yeah. I was super into like rock gardens and then anime and stuff like that. So,
Right. Yeah. The anime seems like it's the more common route. I hear that from people a lot, that they're interested in anime and then they end up going to Japan through that. The rock gardens is a little bit more niche, I feel
well,
like.
anime wasn't a thing. Like, this is like the early 90s. So the only anime that, Dragon Ball Z wasn't even on TV when I got into anime. It was, do you know the
Okay.
Sci-Fi Channel?
No, I
Well,
don't.
I don't even know if it still exists, but there was a channel called the Sci-Fi Channel, and they had like adult anime on every Saturday morning. And when I was
Okay.
like 7 and 8, I used to watch that. There's blood and stuff like that, like extreme violence, and I was like, "Whoa,
Yeah.
this is so cool!" So this is before all that got big.
Wow. So you were like an OG anime fan.
I was an OG anime nerd. Like you had to go out. I mean, sometimes they had stuff at Blockbuster, but if you wanted to buy one, you had to go to like random stores.
So if it wasn't quite as mainstream at that point, like what was your first exposure to anime?
Well,
Was it that channel?
Yeah, it was the Sci-Fi Channel, and like now you can find anime, like it's Japan's biggest export, right? But back then, like you had to be pretty weird to be into anime. It was like, as I said, it was a lot more like pervert. I mean, I guess it still is. I guess it's still pretty violent, but back then the stuff that got to the States was like the most extreme anime that there, Yeah.
So you liked it before it was cool, basically.
Yeah. I'm a hipster. I liked anime before it was cool.
Let the record show you were
Yeah.
one of the OGs.
Yeah.
Okay. So I mean, loving anime, into rock gardens, that's one thing. Going to Japan seems like a pretty big step. How did that come to be?
Yeah, well, got into anime, and then in middle school, I'd always write my papers on like Japanese history stuff. So I was like the original weeb, you know what I mean? The OG weeb. And then,
Yeah.
and then in high school, I had a Japanese teacher who also taught math. My high school offered Japanese. Of course, it wasn't like, it wasn't like super intense or like, too thorough, but she definitely got me. Or she influenced me a lot, and she was really cute, and I was a teenager, and I liked her, and we went to Japan together with the class.
Oh,
So,
cool. So it was a part of the class.
yeah,
Everyone.
it was a
Yeah.
class trip. Yeah.
Interesting. Now, is taking Japanese in high school a common thing in American schools?
No, definitely not. I mean, maybe now they have it more, but it's not like I could speak Japanese or anything like that. You know what I mean? It was more just like an exposure to Japan from my perspective. But
But it was a language course. It wasn't
it was
like
a language
Japanese
course.
history
Yeah,
class.
yeah, for sure.
Because I talked to Matt vs. Japan. I had him on the podcast before as well. And I believe he started that way too. He had a Japanese language class, and that's in Oregon.
Yeah,
Or-
Oregon.
I
That's
think
right.
Oregon,
Yeah. I mean, he's one of my best
And-
friends. So
Yeah, and like I don't know, like I'm from Canada, and so I don't know exactly how the American school system works, but I just assumed that people mostly studied like French and Spanish and things like that. I didn't realize that Japanese was also offered at the high school level, but that's a super cool way to learn a language, earlier in life too.
I got lucky. I got very lucky. I did have Spanish before, and I wasn't interested. It didn't interest me at all. So I didn't like take any Spanish in. Ironically, now I'm learning Spanish and I really like it. But when I was a little kid, I didn't get it at all. You know, it didn't click with me. So
So you're learning Spanish now that you live in Japan, not when you lived in California.
yeah, not when I lived in California. Yeah, I really wish I would have paid more attention, but yeah.
Right. It seems like that would be, you could probably use Spanish more in your day-to-day life in California than you could Japanese.
For sure.
Okay, so you went on this first kind of school trip with that class. How long was that for?
It was maybe a week or something like that, and we just went around. Like I remember, I've said this a lot of times, but I remember being in Osaka. Do you know Mr. Donuts? There's like a donut place in Japan called Mr. Donuts.
No, I don't.
Okay, well, it's a really good donut shop called Mr. Donuts in Japan, and I remember being maybe 14 or 15 in Mr. Donuts in the morning, eating a donut with ramen. They had a ramen and donut combo, and I don't remember ever being happier, besides maybe my kids being born. But I remember like, whoa, this country is amazing.
This is like the authentic Japanese experience. Ramen and Mr. Donut all in the same spot.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the whole country seemed futuristic and, you know, buildings everywhere. Yeah.
Because that's something that I'm curious about. I'm a kind of person that I've always been interested in the international community, going to other countries, but I have a tendency to kind of idealize what I think another country will be like. You know, I take like all of the stereotypes, all of the best things, and I mash it together in my mind. And I'm like, the first day, this country is going to be the best thing I've ever seen in my life. And so like you had all this interest in Japanese culture. When you got there, it sounds like it did live up to that expectation.
Yeah, it went beyond that expectation for sure.
Above and beyond even.
Yeah. I mean, now there's so many foreigners in Japan, you know, like you go to Shibuya and it might as well not be Japan. You know what I mean? Especially after that pandemic, it's just filled with foreigners. But back then it felt so foreign to me. It was just this amazing experience. I knew I wanted to go back there.
And was there something in particular that made you want to come back?
Well, I always liked the culture. I wanted to study more of that. Obviously I was still into anime at that time. Yeah. I mean, and it's funny. I didn't have the goal like Matt vs. Japan to learn like I'd never thought like I'm going to get really good at Japanese. It was never a particular goal or anything of mine, but I did like Japan. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And how was your Japanese at that point?
I couldn't understand anything. Zero.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the class was an introduction, but it wasn't super comprehensive.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I would say even college courses are just an introduction.
Now, is that because the language requires a lot of time to learn, or is it because it's not taught in an effective way in the US?
Well, I might be getting ahead of myself, but as I said, like YouTube didn't have Japanese content on it. There was no YouTube when I was in high school, number one. Maybe there, I don't even remember when YouTube started, but
I think it was 2006.
Yeah. So I guess that's after high school for me. And it's interesting because if you listen, like Matt's maybe 15 years younger than me. I don't know, maybe less, maybe about 10 years younger than me. The generation above me, they have really bad Japanese pronunciation. Then my generation got a little bit better. Then Matt's got even better. And now the younger people, foreigners speaking Japanese, speak it like perfectly. And all it had to do with was being exposed to stuff on YouTube and Netflix and listening. So in these college courses, you're not listening at all. You're outputting and writing, and you do learn about Japanese, but it instills a bunch of bad habits as well.
Right. Yeah, I do kind of have a theory about learning languages through kind of institutions or education systems like in school and university. In that like it gets you really good at specific skills, like passive skills. Yes. Listening comprehension, reading probably, but yeah, speaking seems to always fall through the cracks. Like, and I don't know if there's not a super effective way to teach speaking in a school, but it just seems like they never address that super well. Like maybe you do a presentation and it's 10 minutes and that you do 2 of those in an entire semester. And it's like, well, that isn't a lot of reps in terms of actual speaking practice. Or they get you to practice like with your classmates, like, oh, whoever's sitting beside you, read through these questions and ask them about their day and they can tell you about their day. And no one ever did that. Like they would do like the first question and then be like, screw this, let's just speak English.
Well, I think the main difficulty is that there's not enough listening comprehension. Like I'm of the same opinion as Matt, that if I would have just been listening to Japanese, like say for 4 hours a day for 8 years, I would have just acquired Japanese even without actually studying it. It might have taken a little bit longer. The studying is good because it's like a instruction manual basically for like what type of language this language is. But I like one of the things that I think really hindered my Japanese was kanji. Like I can read it now. I can't write it, but I mean I can type it. And so much of your time is dedicated to like the stroke order and all that stuff. It basically like hinders your speaking and listening skills because all you're doing is writing. When Japanese people don't even write kanji at this point in time either. So
yeah, they just type it, right?
yeah, they just type it. You just have to read it. So if I was going to start a course, I would have kanji only as reading and not as writing.
So you think that the first step in acquiring a new language would be the listening comprehension? That's the biggest one.
And that's what I didn't have. Like even when I would watch the animes when I was like in middle school or high school, they were dubbed. I mean, sometimes you could find good subtitled ones, but yeah. I mean, you have to listen. Like listening is by far the hardest skill to acquire. Like to fluently, basically understand everything you're listening to. Even now, like if I put on like news about like the economy or something, there's tons of things that I can't grasp.
But now that might not have to do with listening comprehension at this stage. It probably has to do with vocabulary, right?
Yes, has to do with vocabulary, and that's basically the two most important things is vocabulary and listening comprehension. If you don't have the vocab, it doesn't work, So
like not having that exposure to Japanese content, do you think it held you back in learning Japanese at the beginning?
Oh yeah. I feel if I would have been more exposed to Japanese content earlier, my Japanese would be so much better. Because I'm not trying to sound humble or sound cool, but my Japanese is like pretty high level. But Matt's even like levels above me, which shows how good you can get from being exposed to the language through listening.
Yeah, I think that sometimes we don't consider the resources that are available to a language as a part of the difficulty in learning it. Like it's not just how different it is grammatically from your native language to the target language, although that factors in. It's also about what resources you have to learn about these differences, right?
Exactly.
My first exposure to learning foreign languages was with Tagalog or Filipino.
Okay,
and
wow.
as you can imagine, not a lot of resources to learn that, right?
Yeah.
And I started that process 11 years ago. So whatever they had today, was even less at that point. And so this whole idea of watching videos that have subtitles in the language, I mean, that just didn't exist for Tagalog. I don't think it exists now, really. And so I never had that. Where learning other languages like German and Spanish, I mean, you're spoiled. You can pick whatever you want. YouTube, even Netflix, will have shows and movies in other languages that has the original subtitles. And so, listening comprehension for me was the hardest thing about Tagalog as well, because I didn't have it, just like what you're talking about.